Hi, my name is Shinko. Welcome to my channel. And maybe you noticed the slight change and how clear things look. And you'll definitely notice by how long this video is. I got the new phone, finally. So, continuing to escape from reality and the horrors of it and the horrors of real life, because real life sucks. We can do it better now. We've been reading The Warriors, Fire and Ice, which is the second book in the Warrior series. I do have previous videos of me reading the first book. You can check that out. I am sorry about this absence. I do have a new phone, new network, so I cannot say how long it will take to upload videos, but I do know that things have been improved. We were on chapter 5. And I don't know when I plan on stopping, but it'll be at a good point. So, Fireheart and Graystripe are searching for Wind Clan right now. They're on their first official warrior mission. So, they're trying to find Wind Clan, essentially. Wind Clan's been driven out of their lands by Shadow Clan, the previous leader. But now there's a new leader of Shadow Clan, Night Pelt. He's not inherited the name Star in his name yet, so he doesn't have 9 lives, and he's not, according to Star Clan, he's not the leader yet. But that's in the workings right now. So Fireheart stopped and lifted his head. He saw a thunder path ahead of them, arching high into the air on massive stone logs. It illuminated by the eyes of monsters that moved along it. And then another thunder path ran below, veering off into the darkness. So what they're describing here, essentially a freeway, it seems like. Graystripe nodded towards a tall thistle. And smell this! Fireheart inhaled the scent. It was a fresh Wind Clan marker. They must have settled somewhere near here, Graystripe murmured in disbelief. A pang of excitement twisted Fireheart's stomach. Both cats looked silently at each other for a moment. Then, without a word, they moved on towards the stinking thunder paths. Graystripe spoke at last. Why would Wind Clan come to a place like this? I guess not even Brokestar would want to follow them here, Fireheart answered grimly. He stopped. A thought was nagging at him. Graystripe paused beside him. What is it? If Wind Clan is hiding so near the thunder paths, Fireheart meowed slowly, they must be fairly desperate not to be found. They're more likely to trust us if we arrive in daylight than if we creep up on them in darkness. Does that mean we can rest? Asked Graystripe, sitting down heavily. Just until it's light, meowed Fireheart. We'll find somewhere to hide and see if we can get some sleep. Are you hungry? Graystripe shook his head. Me neither, Fireheart agreed. I don't know if it's those herbs or because the stench from the thunder path is making me feel sick. Where shall we sleep? Graystripe looked around. Fireheart had already noticed a dark shadow in the ground up ahead. What's that? A burrow? Graystripe sounded puzzled. It's too big for a rabbit. Surely there can't be a badger set here. Let's take a look, Fireheart suggested. The hole was larger than a badger set, smooth and lined with stone. Fireheart sniffed it, then put his front paws on its rim and peered cautiously inside. A stone tunnel sloped away, down into the ground. I can feel air flowing through it, he meowed, his voice echoing away in the shadows. It must come up somewhere over there. He ducked back out and pointed his nose towards the tangle of thunder paths. Is it empty? Graystripe asked. Smells like it. Come on then. Graystripe led the way into the tunnel. After a few fox lengths, the slope leveled out. Fireheart halted and sniffed the damp air. He could smell nothing but the fumes of the thunderpath. A roaring noise rumbled overhead. Fireheart's paws trembled as the stone floor vibrated. Was the thunderpath above them? He fluffed out his coat against the relentless draft and felt Graystripe's fur brush against him. His friend was circling, preparing to settle down to sleep. Fireheart crouched down and huddled beside his friend. He closed his stinging eyes, thoughts of the gentle forest breezes and the rustling of the leaves. Exhaustion fought briefly with a pang of longing to be home in his den before he gave in to the blackness that swam into his mind. When Fireheart opened his eyes again, gray light was glowing at the end of the tunnel. Dawn must be near. Fireheart's bones ached from the cold, hard ground. He nudged Graystripe, who grunted. "Morning already?" "Almost," Fireheart answered, getting to his paws. Graystripe stretched and stood up as well. "I think we should head that way," Fireheart meowed, craning his neck away from the light. "I think this tunnel leads right under a thunderpath. It might take us nearer to the..." His voice trailed off. He had no words to describe the tangle of the thunderpath they had seen last night. Beside him, Graystripe nodded, and together they began to pad wordlessly into the darkness. Before long, Fireheart spotted light ahead of them. They quickened their pace until they were racing up a short, steep slope that led them into the world filled with gray dawn light. They had come up near the edge of a patch of barren, dirty grass. Thunderpaths enclosed it on two sides, and another arched overhead. A fire burned in the middle of the grass. A few two-legs lay around it. One of them stretched and rolled over, and another grunted angrily in his sleep. But the noise and stench from the thunderpaths didn't seem to wake them. Fireheart watched them warily, then froze as something else caught his eye. Dark outlines that flitted back and forth in front of the flames. Cats! Could it be WindClan? Fireheart looked at the fire and the cats, and his mind flooded with the memory of his dream. The noise of the thunderpath, the sight of the flames and the cats, and Spiderleaf's voice murmuring, "Fire will save the clan." A surge of emotion made Fireheart's legs feel weak. Did this mean that ThunderClan's fate was bound up with the fate of WindClan? "Fireheart! Fireheart!" Graystripe's voice jolted Fireheart back to reality. He breathed deeply to calm himself. "We must find Tallstar and speak with them," he meowed. "Then, you do think this is WindClan?" asked Graystripe. "You smelled their marker. Who else could it be?" Fireheart replied. Graystripe looked at him, his eyes shining with triumph. "We found them!" Fireheart nodded. He didn't point out that finding WindClan was only half of their mission. They still had to convince them that it was safe to return home. Graystripe braced himself, ready to leap forward. "Let's go!" "Hang on," Fireheart warned. "We don't want to startle them." Just then, one of the two legs sat up with a jolt and began shouting at the ragged cats around the fire. The noise roused the other two legs, who joined in with rough, angry voices. The WindClan cats scattered, all caution forgotten. Fireheart and Graystripe raced after them. Fireheart could feel his fur prickle with fear as he and Graystripe ran straight towards the fire and the two legs. Every instinct told him to keep away, but he dared not lose sight of the fleeing WindClan cats. One of the two legs staggered to its feet, looming up in front of him. Fireheart skidded, sending up a spray of dust. Something exploded beside him, pelting him with hard-edged splinters, but nothing pierced his thick coat. He glanced backward, checking for Graystripe. He was relieved to see his friend right beside him, his eyes wide with alarm, and his fur standing on end. They charged into the safety of the shadows beneath the soaring thunderpath. Ahead, Fireheart watched the Wind Clan cats stop close to one of the Thunderpath's great stone legs, and then, one by one, the cats disappeared into the ground. "Where did they go?" meowed Graystripe in amazement. "Another tunnel?" Fireheart suggested. "Come on, let's find out." Cautiously, the two friends approached the spot where the Wind Clan cats had vanished. As they neared, they saw a hole in the earth. Like the resting place on the previous night, the entrance was round and lined with stone, sloping away into utter blackness. Fireheart led the way, all his senses alert for a Wind Clan patrol. The floor beneath his paws felt wet and slimy. The sound of trickling water echoed around them. As the tunnel leveled out, Fireheart pricked his ears and opened his mouth. The damp air smelled rank and bitter, worse than the tunnels they had slept in. Here, the Thunderpath's fumes mingled with the fierce scent of Wind Clan cats. It was too dark to see anything, but after a few paces, Fireheart's whiskers sensed a turning in the tunnel. Fireheart flicked his tail, touching Graystripe lightly with his tip. He couldn't see his friend in the blackness, but Graystripe must have felt the signal, because he stopped beside Fireheart. Together, they peered around the corner. Ahead of the tunnel was led by a narrow hole in the ceiling. Ahead of them, the tunnel was lit by a narrow hole in the ceiling that led to the wasteland above. Fireheart could see many cats huddled together in the gray light. Warriors, elders, queens, kits, all pitifully thin. A cold breeze blew relentlessly through the hole in the roof, stirring the thin fur on their skinny bodies. Fireheart shuddered, for the breeze carried to him the stench of sickness and crow food. Suddenly, the tunnel shook as a monster roared overhead. Graystripe, Fireheart, already tense, jumped, but the Wind Clan cats didn't react. They simply huddled with half-closed eyes, numb to their surroundings. The noise died away. Fireheart took a deep breath and stepped around the corner, out into the thin light. A gray Wind Clan Tom spun around, his fur standing on end as he yelled in alarm to the rest of the clan. In one smooth movement, the Wind Clan cats formed a line across the tunnel in front of the queens and elders, their backs arched, hissing fiercely. With a feeling of dread, Fireheart saw the glint of unsheathed claws and thorn-sharp fangs. These half-starved cats were about to attack. Chapter 6. Fireheart pressed his body warningly against Graystripe, who had padded out to join him. They had to show no threat if they were to survive. The Wind Clan warriors stood their ground without moving a muscle. They're waiting for a signal from their leader, Fireheart realized. They still follow the warrior code, even though they have to live like this. From behind the line of warriors, a black and white Tom weaved his way to the front. With a jolt, Fireheart recognized the long-tailed cat from his dream. This must be Tallstar, leader of Wind Clan. Tallstar sniffed the air, but Fireheart and Graystripe were downwind, their scents carried away by the steady breeze. As the black and white cat walked towards them, Fireheart breathed in the rank odor of crow food that hung on his coat. Like Graystripe, he remained perfectly still, his eyes down, as Tallstar circled them, sniffing their fur closely. Finally, Tallstar returned to his warriors. Fireheart heard him murmur, "ThunderClan." The warriors flattened their fur, but remained in a defensive line, shielding the rest of the cats. Tallstar turned to face his visitors, sat down, curling his tail carefully around his paws. "I was expecting ShadowClan," he growled, his eyes burned with hostility. "Why are you here?" "We come to find you," Fireheart meowed, feeling his voice crack with tension. "Bluestar, the other clan leaders, want you to return to your home." The Wind Clan leader's voice was still wary. That land is not safe for my clan anymore, he meowed. There was a hunted look in Tallstar's eyes that sent a pang of sorrow through Fireheart. Shadow Clan has driven out Broken Star, he meowed. He is no longer a threat. The warriors behind Tallstar turned and looked at one another. Murmurs of surprise rippled back through the clan. You must return as soon as possible, Fireheart urged. Shadow Clan and River Clan are starting to hunt in the uplands. We saw a River Clan hunting patrol near the old badger set while we were on our way here. Tallstar bristled angrily. But they're poor rabbit hunters, Graystripe added. I think they went home with empty bellies. Tallstar and his warriors purred with satisfaction. Their good spirits encouraged Fireheart, but he could see how weak they were. This clan would find their journey back to the uplands long and hard. May we travel with you? He suggested respectfully. Tallstar's eyes flashed. He knew the question was a tactful offer to help. He looked steadily at Fireheart. Yes, he replied at last. Thank you. Fireheart realized he hadn't introduced himself. This is Graystripe, he meowed, dipping his head, and I am Fireheart. We are warriors of Thunder Clan. Fireheart, repeated Tallstar thoughtfully. Sunlight was flooding through the gap in the roof now, making Fireheart's orange pelt glow in the dim tunnel. The name suits you. Another monster roared overhead. Fireheart and Graystripe flinched. Tallstar watched them with amusement and flicked his tail. It must have been a signal, for the line of warriors behind him split up. We shall leave at once, he announced, standing up. Are we all fit for the journey? Tallstar asked as the warriors began to move among the queens and elders. All except Morning Flower's kit, replied a mottled brown warrior. He is too young. Then we must take turns carrying him, answered Tallstar. The Wind Clan cats shuffled forward, their eyes dull with pain and exhaustion. A tortoiseshell queen was holding a tiny kit gently by the scruff of its neck. The little creature's eyes were hardly open. Ready? Called Tallstar. A black tom with a misshapen paw looked around the clan and then answered for them. Ready! He meowed. Fireheart and Graystripe turned and made their way back to the tunnel entrance and waited while the Wind Clan cats emerged, blinking into the sunlight. Some of the elders blinked for so long, their faces screwed up against the weak sun, that Fireheart guessed they had not been outside the tunnel for some time. Tallstar padded out of the tunnel last of all, and walked to the head of his clan. Shall we take you back the way we came? Fireheart asked him. I believe it's a shortcut. Is it safe? Asked Tallstar. Fireheart saw the hunted look once more in the leader's eyes. We meant no trouble coming here, Graystripe meowed. Tallstar flicked his tail decisively, as though he was brushing away any doubt. Good, he declared. You come with me. Graystripe, show me the way, Fireheart. Travel beside the clan. Tell my deputy if you see trouble. Which one is he? Asked Fireheart. Tallstar nodded toward the black tom. Deadfoot, he meowed. The warrior turned at the sign of his name and pricked his ears. Fireheart dipped his head in greeting, and he left Graystripe with Tallstar and joined the other cats. As the clan made their way under the Thunderpath arch, Fireheart could still smell the fire, but when they padded out onto the patch of wasteland, the two legs were nowhere to be seen. Graystripe headed straight for the tunnel where he and Fireheart had spent the night. Tallstar entered first, while Fireheart waited at the back until all the clan had disappeared inside. Only Deadfoot remained. Are you sure it leads to daylight? The black tom meowed wearily. It just leads under the Thunderpath. Have you never used this tunnel? Fireheart asked, surprised. When our warriors cross the Thunderpath, they prefer to see where they're heading, growled Deadfoot. Fireheart nodded, and the deputy added, You go first. Fireheart padded down into the dark hole. He emerged to find the Wind-Clan cats staring across the field that led to the final thunder path. Fireheart saw Tallstar consult briefly with Graystripe before they set off into the long, frost-crisp grass. Fireheart walked with the rest of the clan, flanking one side, while Deadfoot limped steadily on the other. Before they were halfway across the field, it was clear that many of the cats were having trouble keeping up the pace. "Tallstar!" yelled Deadfoot. "We need to travel more slowly!" Fireheart looked over his shoulder and saw some of the cats falling further and further behind. Morningflower was among them, the kit swinging from her mouth. Fireheart bounded over to her. She was panting heavily. It couldn't have been long since her kitting. "Let me carry him," Fireheart offered, "just until you've caught your breath." Morningflower glanced warily at Fireheart, but her eyes softened when they met his. She put her kit down, and Fireheart took it gently and walked next to her so that she didn't lose sight of her precious bundle. Tallstar slowed the pace, but only a little. In spite of his obvious exhaustion and the fact that every rib showed under his fur, he burned with fierce energy that lent swiftness to his paws. Fireheart could understand part of the reason for his urgency. The sun was steadily climbing above the horizon. Some of the Wind-Clan cats were sick, some old, and all of them were weak from hunger. If they were going to cross the thunder path without losing any cats, they would have to do it quickly before the monsters came in their swarms. By the time Fireheart and Morningflower arrived at the hedge, Wind-Clan was gathered around its leader. "We cross the thunder path here," Tallstar announced above the noise of a monster race racing past. The Wind-Clan leader squeezed under the hedge. Deadfoot, Graystripe, and a younger warrior followed him. Morningflower leaned towards Fireheart and took hold of her kit. She had stopped panting now, and as she took her kit from Fireheart, she brushed her cheek gratefully against his. He dipped his head to the tortoiseshell queen and followed Graystripe under the hedge. Tallstar and Deadfoot sat staring wordlessly at the wide gray path. Graystripe stood beside them. He flicked his tail toward the younger warrior. "This is Owl Whisker," he told Fireheart. A monster sped past, almost drowning out Graystripe's words, and whipped up stinging dust. Through streaming eyes, Fireheart mewed a greeting to One Whisker and turned his attention to the thunder path. "We should try to get the clan over in small groups," he meowed. "Graystripe and I will stay with any that need help." He looked at the clan leader. "If you agree, Tallstar." Tallstar nodded. "The strongest group will go first," he meowed. The other Wind-Clan cats began to appear through the hedge. Before long, the whole clan was clustered beside them, pressed against the sharp twigs, as far back from the thunder path as possible. Fireheart and Graystripe moved to the edge, watching for a break in the line of monsters. The thunder path was much busier than it had been when they crossed last night. One Whisker led the first group forward. "Do you want us to cross with you?" Fireheart offered. He could smell the young Tom's fear. The molded brown tabby shook his head. The cats beside him peered along the thunder path, first one way, then the other. All was quiet. The group dashed safely to the other side. Two warriors came next, accompanied by a pair of skinny elders. "No!" Fireheart ordered as a monster flashed safely past. The four Wind-Clan cats stepped out onto the empty thunder path. The elders winced as they pattered across on paws raw from the damp tunnel. Fireheart willed them on breathlessly as they neared the other side. A monster was zooming towards them. "Look out!" Graystripe yelled, and even the two elders bounded forward, fur bristling, and hurled themselves to the other side a heartbeat before the monsters raced past. Two larger groups crossed, leaving just one more. Only once they were safely over would Tallstar and Deadfoot cross. Morningflower and her kit stepped up to Fireheart's side. Behind her trembled three very elderly cats. "We'll cross with you," Fireheart meowed. He looked at Graystripe, who nodded. "Tell us when it's safe to go, Graystripe." Fireheart leaned forward to take Morningflower's kit, but she pulled back, her ears flat. Fireheart looked deep into her frightened amber eyes and understood. She and her kit would live or die together. "Now!" Graystripe's yowl. Fireheart and Morningflower stepped down into the thunder path. The elders crept up behind him, with Graystripe beside them. Time seemed to stand still as the elders hobbled slowly forward on stiff, battle-scarred legs. If a monster comes now, we're all fresh kill, Fireheart thought. The other side was still several rabbits' leaps away. Come on, urged Graystripe. The elders tried to hurry, but one stumbled. Graystripe had to nose him back into his paws. Fireheart heard the distant roar of a monster. Go on ahead, he hissed to Morningflower. We'll bring the elders. Morningflower stumbled forward. Her kit squealed as it bumped against the hard ground. Fireheart and Graystripe pressed themselves against the elders' scrawny bodies, nudging them forward. The noise of the approaching monster grew louder and louder. Fireheart grabbed the nearest elder by the scruff of his neck and dragged him forward before turning to haul the second closer to the verge. The monster raced closer. Fireheart closed his eyes, braced himself. There was a screech and an acrid smell that stung his throat, then a fading roar as the monster sped away. Fireheart opened his eyes and looked around. Graystripe was crouching in the middle of the thunder path, unscathed, but staring with wide eyes, full as moons. One elder cowered between them. The other two trembled near the verge. The monster was hurtling away from them, swerving across the thunder path. Thank StarClan, it had missed them all. Fireheart took a shuddering breath. Come on, he meowed to the last elder. Almost there. Tallstar bounded across with Deadfoot and gathered his trembling clan around him on the verge. One whisker touched Fireheart's nose with his own. You would have died for us, he murmured. WindClan will never forget that. Tallstar's voice sounded behind them. One whisker is right. We shall honor you both in our stories. We must keep going, he continued. We have a long journey ahead of us. As the cats prepared to move off, Fireheart padded over to Morningflower. She was busy licking her kit. Is he all right? Fireheart asked. Oh, yes, answered Morningflower. What about you? Asked Fireheart. Morningflower didn't answer. Fireheart turned to a gray queen who answered his unspoken question. Don't worry, she meowed. I'll take the kit next. The clan followed the hedgerow along the thunder path before turning away to join the track through the woods. The scents here seemed to soothe the WindClan cats, but the journey had taken its toll. They were traveling slower than ever, and when they reached the fence at the far side, it took all of Fireheart's strength to help the weakest cat over. The sun had passed its highest point by the time Fireheart spotted the two-leg place in the distance. He sniffed the air hopefully, but there was still no scent of Ravenpaw. Fireheart felt a stab of grief, and he tried to ignore the nagging thought that he should have never sent his friend alone. Clouds billowed up over the high stones, growing blacker as they covered the sinking sun. A cold wind ruffled the cat's fur, bringing the first drops of rain. Fireheart looked at the WindClan cats. There was no way they could travel through a long, wet night. He was tired too, and for the first time since he'd eaten Yellowfang's herbs, he was feeling the effects of hunger. A glance at Graystripe told him that his friend felt the same way. The big gray warrior's tail drooped, and his ears were flattened against the spattering rain. Tallstar, Fireheart called. Perhaps we should stop soon and shelter for the night. The WindClan leader stopped and waited while Fireheart caught up with him. I agree, he meowed. There's a ditch here. We could shelter in that until sunrise. Graystripe and Fireheart exchanged glances. We might be better sheltering in the hedgerow, Fireheart suggested. There are rats in these ditches. Tallstar nodded. Very well. He turned to his clan and announced that they would be spending the night here. The queen's elders flopped down at once, despite the rain, while the warriors and the princess gathered to discuss hunting patrols. Fireheart and Graystripe joined them. I don't know how good the hunting will be here, Fireheart meowed. There are too many two legs. Graystripe's stomach growled as if in agreement. The other warriors turned to him with amused but sympathetic eyes. They then froze as the grass behind them rustled. The WindClan warriors bristled and arched their backs, unsheathing their sharp claws. But Fireheart and Graystripe turned their heads joyfully. The wind carried a scent familiar as their own den. Ravenpaw! Fireheart gasped as a sleek black cat emerged from the long grass. I'm going to end it there. So chapter 5 is, well, actually we're on chapter 6. Chapter 6 is long, turning into a long chapter. Ending it there. We know Ravenpaw's okay officially now. He survived, which means he must have made it to Barley's farm. Awesome! A win for the cat. Anyway, so they're not too far now. They still have a little bit of ways to go, but they're not too far now from home. Do you think when WindClan does get back, that they'll be accepted? We've had no deaths so far on this trip. Do you think that will change, though? And hey, Ravenpaw is here. Do you think maybe he'll know the area? Maybe he'll know ways to help them? Huh? Who knows? But I'll leave it at that. Things are coming together. The cats are coming home. Now I do want to bring up something. The cats tell their stories, and that's how their history is passed. So there is going to be things in their history that they don't know anymore, that it's been long forgotten. Stories, other cats. So if you're learning a fact early on about the clans, there's a very large chance that there's more to it, or that it's not completely accurate. It says never before, it says in this, and in the first book, never before had another clan been run from its own territory. But that's as far as they know in their history. We don't know if there's any other previous clans. As it stands, there's Shadow, Wind, River, Thunder, Star. Star is, when they're dead. But essentially there's 4 living clans that we know of so far. Do you think River Clan and Shadow Clan will really be willing to give up the extra land? Do you think Wind Clan will truly be accepted? Will they have to fight for their land? Will it be accepted, but some sneaking around is going to happen? I guess we'll find out next time. I hope you're having a wonderful day. My life is in the gutter. So that, besides the point, hope you're doing great. Have a wonderful day. Be safe out there in this crazy mixed up universe of ours.